Hi everyone, Alexandra Jarrett, Jupiter returns here with your weekly astrology forecast for the week of March the 30th through to April the 5th, and I hope this finds you all safe and well. I also hope that as I left you last week, we were in the midst of some really gorgeous energy between Venus and Jupiter. It was a real respite. An uplifting and warm feeling. So I really hope that you were able to touch into that energy. We're now moving back into, it's a very active week, lots and lots of stuff taking place up there in the sky. And so we can anticipate that lots of things will be happening down here for us. A little bit more intense again. So it was nice to have that bit of a breather. Just to kind of refocus us in where we're seeing the kind of the mood music, the slower moving background planets that we have that are slowly doing their thing throughout the whole of the year. That focus really is up there in Capricorn. As you'll recall from previous videos and much of what I've been talking about really for the last couple of years, we had that big conjunction on April the 12th. Of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. We also had at that time, on the 10th of January this year, we had a powerful eclipse in Capricorn. And I just pieced together today the fact that the date of that eclipse was the date of the very first death from coronavirus that was reported in China at the time. And we've come very far since that point, obviously. So the specifics are, we've got the nodal axis. These are the guys that create the eclipses, and they're just about finishing off their work in the signs of Capricorn and Cancer. So where we had that big conjunction, it was exacerbated even more, brought into a more sharp focus by the eclipses taking place in those signs as well. They are coming to a close point of their job that they've been doing in those signs, and will move on to Gemini and Sagittarius. Later on in the year, we're going to start having eclipses in those signs. And, you know, this is really important because in lots of ways, and I'll dip into this as I move through the weekly forecast, in lots of ways we're moving out of kind of historical, traditional and old types of energies, which both Capricorn and Cancer kind of rule those ideas. Capricorn is very traditional. It likes things to last. It's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is Kronos. Kronos, the Lord of Time, likes things to last a long time, doesn't really like change. In Cancer, Cancer rules our lineage, our family, our personal history. So again, there's this draw to the past, and you'll often find Cancerian people or people with a lot of Cancer in the chart really drawn to history and antiques, that kind of thing. So in lots of ways, we're moving from this energy of the past and the way things have always been done into very much more youthful and futuristic kinds of energies. Sagittarius always has its eye on the horizon, loves to have an adventure and to explore and to widen its horizons. And Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is a really youthful energy, and often Gemini people will kind of have that kind of fun, jokey, youthful exuberance about them. So we'll see echoes of that later on. The Capricorn Cancer axis as well deals with essentially what we do out there in the world. Capricorn, it's our status in society or in the workplace, very much about the workplace, what our career is, what our ambitions are that we're trying to achieve in the world in terms of securing our future through material accomplishments and achievements. So it's very much about work and the work life and the business and the structure that facilitates the accumulation of wealth and material possessions. In contrast, Cancer deals with what we have going on in here. So if Capricorn's what I do out there in the world, Cancer relates to the home and the family and the hearth. It's about emotions. It's about, you know, what we do at the end of the day when we finish doing our thing out there. We come home. We come home to nurture ourselves and feel safe and comfortable and to relax. Now, of course, at the moment, this is being blurred, you know, with so many people working from home. Capricorn, Cancer, you know, is there even a sacred space anymore to have that sense of home, to be able to just relax and get away from, you know, the crazy busy outer world? And I think we really need to focus in on doing some work to ensure that we create that space within us. So looking deeper at the Cancer Capricorn axis, I was listening to Sadhguru talk this week. I listen to him from time to time because I find him very charismatic. And that's something else that I'll tap into recently. He was talking about the virus, and he was the piece was actually entitled "This virus isn't trying to kill you. The virus doesn't want to kill you." And this really captured my attention. It captured my attention. He went on to say basically that in order to continue its survival, in order to be able to thrive and achieve what it wants to out there, it has to have a home, okay? It has to have a host. And that, at the moment now, is us. It used to be animals, potentially, if that's kind of what you believe where it came from, the origins. Whatever its origins, it's now making us the host. Now, it's teaching us something, I believe, because what it's saying is, it won't be able to survive if it kills the host. The virus has to mutate. Viruses mutate, i.e. change, because they kind of realize, if I go too aggressively, if I live too aggressively within my host, I will kill it, and then I won't have a home and I will die. And this struck me as being a very potent kind of mirroring of our place as human beings on the planet, on our mother, on our home of Gaia. Are we living too aggressively on our host? And is that ultimately going to mean that we don't get to survive? So he was saying that the virus mutates, and this happens with previous viruses that have come through time, is they tend to get less severe as the generations pass on, because they kind of figure that they're not going to survive if they just go hell for leather and really, really hit hard. So this is how natural immunity builds up, and how the severity of the illness can reduce over time as they mutate to kind of adapt to the home that they're living in. And this is very much, I think, a theme of what we really now need to grasp, is that we cannot go back to business as usual, which is the Capricorn way of things. This is the, let's keep things as they always are. Let's keep things historical and traditional, and we've always done this, this will always work. We're moving out of that energy now for various reasons, and part of that is going to have to be this this consideration of how we are treating our host as well, and if we're doing that just a little bit too aggressively for our own good. So that was really interesting, and I just thought I'd share that with you, just to kind of get us into the mood of things. Last week also we had Mars meeting up with Pluto, and I think what this did was trigger, Mars is very triggering, it raised our suspicions. Whenever there's a lot of Pluto or Scorpio energy around, there's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of feelings of we're not being told quite the whole truth of a situation, because Pluto rules hidden things. It rules mysterious kind of dark things that draw us in, like we're compelled. There's like a magnetic pull to Scorpio, Pluto kinds of things, where we can't quite resist it, even though we know it's probably quite dark. It's kind of like the rubbernecking on the motorway that you get when there's been an accident. Like people just, they know it's some kind of horror show going on over there, but they just can't resist the lure. This is kind of the Pluto's kind of simultaneous magnetism and repulsion at the same time. And Pluto rules what's been buried, what's been pushed down. And so this is secrets, it's hidden things, it's darknesses that, you know, have wanted to be kept hidden and kept away and controlled. So when Mars comes along, it's kind of like, it's quite, you know, he's very, he's the warrior, he's Mars, he's the foot soldier essentially, right? And he's very concerned with aggression to a certain extent. He wants to, you know, he's all about the fight, really. And so this kind of piqued our suspicions. And I think what we're building into now, and something I'll cover more as we move through the session, is just the huge amount of different conspiracy theories that there are around at this time. We're all trying desperately to make sense of where we find ourselves in this completely surreal situation. If I told you 6 months ago that, you know, in March I'd be sitting here talking to you and the entire population of the world would be in lockdown because there was a pandemic, you would probably think, okay, maybe, you know, there'd be some kind of like a fair amount of doubt. But here we are, you know, these are very, very strange and surreal times. And so we need the human state just needs to make some sense. It needs to have a sense of control to get safety. And so we're seeking that feeling of inner safety through trying to work it all out, trying to work out what's being hidden. Pluto, you know, there's some kind of, you know, hidden agenda to all of this. So I'm going to explore that. But I would just say at this point, just question everything, no matter what the source is, no matter what your beliefs are. This is not a time that we're going to get much clarity. And I'll go on to explain why that is at the moment. So acknowledge that there is a need for an understanding, and just also acknowledge that at the same time, this isn't a time that we can anticipate getting a very clear picture of things. So yes, we have the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. This is one of the major aspects that we're building into as the week progresses. So I want to just tap you into that now. It doesn't go exact for a little while, but as I've often mentioned in the past, you know, planets, when they're coming together, that's when they tend to be at their strongest and most potent, catching, almost like a surfer catching the wave as it's building up. Surfer doesn't, you know, jump onto the wave right when it's peaking. We kind of, we want to get ahead of that and sort of see where it's taking us. So we've got Jupiter and Pluto. So let's have a look at this, this kind of mood music to the week then that we've got building up. Jupiter rules our belief systems. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and Jupiter rules, it's, in traditional Western astrology, he's known as a benefic, the great benefic, because he's said to bring good luck. He's said to bring abundance and growth and expansion and wealth and fortune. And it's very prominent in the charts of, say, for example, the royal family, or people who achieve high status and high accomplishments in life. It's a leadership type of energy. He wants to be the king, just Jupiter. You know, he's the sky god in mythology. He kind of wants to look down on everyone from this lofty position. And that's kind of the flip side of Jupiter as well, is that Jupiter can get a bit full of himself. He can get just a bit too confident in his own ability and his own knowledge. And sometimes we have to tell Jupiter to just wind his neck in a little bit, because he just gets a bit too big for his own boots. So that expansive growth quality can need just reining in just a little bit. But he rules religion and philosophy and our personal beliefs and expansion. So when we add that expansive quality to Pluto, Pluto being death, being crisis, being hidden things, being the darkness, and absolutely what's kind of provoked the situation that we find ourselves in, then I anticipate that we'll see, you know, as this builds in, that there's going to be an increase, Jupiter, in the death rate, unfortunately, or at least the infection rate. And obviously that's talked about a lot in the news anyway at this time, but certainly that correlates to the type of influence that Jupiter and Pluto can have. And there's lots of ways that Jupiter and Pluto can influence us, lots of different expressions of their energy. An accumulation, Jupiter, of power. Pluto, where are we seeing power, control being sort of pulled together? This could be a good thing. This could be to help us, to get us out of this crisis, and all the other sort of potentialities thereof. The other thing with Pluto and Jupiter is that it can expose. Pluto is quite purgative. Pluto, when it's activated like it is, and it has been activated by Mars not long ago, brings things up. It kind of like, it exposes things that have been buried and hidden for a long time, brings them up to the surface. So with Jupiter being so beneficial, being related to wisdom and riches, this can expose, Pluto, some real abundance and wealth and wisdom that we would otherwise not have known about had we not gone into Pluto times and had to really go deep into this crisis. So some real exposing some gems. It's kind of like mining, really, isn't it? It's like getting really deep down into the core of something, and that's where all the gems and the gold and the, you know, the black gold, you know, oil, that's where it all comes from. There's a couple of charts that I looked at over the weekend, just to kind of, they drew my attention for a variety of reasons, and they're both individuals who have the Pluto and Jupiter conjunction in their birth charts. I thought, well, this will be interesting just to look at how this can show up. The first guy that I looked at was Bill Gates, huge Jupiter power, Pluto. You know, this is a man who's managed to accumulate an extraordinary amount of wealth, and this has been referred to as a billionaire signature in the chart. These two guys meet up in his second house of money, so no surprises that he's an incredibly wealthy man. So that's really interesting that it's in his chart, and that can kind of give you an idea of how it can play out. And more about him later, actually. The other guy I looked at was Jim Jones, who was a crazy guy, and he was a religious cult leader. So we're seeing the Jupiter-Pluto aspects play out there. His beliefs, his religions, his philosophy, and the darkness of Pluto actually resulted in the Jonestown massacre, where he convinced his followers, the people that kind of held him as their leader, to commit mass suicide. 900 people took their own lives by drinking poison. So this is, and his Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is in his seventh house of other people and relationships to other people. So we can see, you know, there's a whole range of different ways that these energies can play out, but it's a type of conjunction that always kind of shows up in quite big and powerful ways. So that's the kind of the mood music for the week. Moving then on into where we find ourselves now. We have the moon in Gemini. Mercury ruled Gemini. And Mercury is a strong feature of this week too. Part of the reason why I say this is not a time to be able to expect clarity and accuracy is because the moon's ruler at this time, Mercury, who rules information. Okay, Mercury is the messenger. He rules information. He rules our thinking processes. and our ability to communicate with each other. Mercury is currently in the sign of Pisces, and it just doesn't like being in Pisces. Mercury rules Virgo, the opposite energy to Pisces, and Virgo is all about precision. Virgo is all about order and neatness and clarity, doing things in the right way. Pisces is chaos. Pisces is fluid, boundless water. So Mercury can't get that clarity that it needs in Pisces. And to intensify that even more, Mercury is coming up to meet Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, later on in the week, and I'll talk a bit more about that now. So today we have the moon in a very busy sign. Okay, Gemini is very busy energy. It's like, I want to be here, I want to be there, I want to do a bit of that, a bit of this, a bit of the other. And our minds are kind of being pulled in all different directions with so much information and input to try and kind of pick apart. And that can disturb our sleep as well with the connection over to Pisces. It can make us just have our minds be too busy trying to sort of understand everything and make sense of everything. Also today, a really important ingress that we have, Mars is now finished off the journey through Capricorn and will ingress Aquarius today. Now this is again a reference to moving out of the past and the historical and the business as usual and into the future. Aquarius is the sign of the future. Aquarian people like the latest things. They like advancements. They like wonderful inventions. It's a very inventor, kind of nutty professor kind of energy. They love the latest digital technology. And it's very futuristic. And it's the tribe, it's the collective. So we had that when Saturn ingressed into Aquarius last week, Saturn being rules and authority, we had, this is when our lockdown here in the UK and in a few other countries as well really started in earnest. Saturn is distancing and Aquarius is social, the tribe, the connection, how we're all connected to each other. So now we have Mars moving into that setting. That's happening today, moving us out of the old and into the very cutting edge and the very new. So that actual conjunction between Mars and Saturn will go exact on Tuesday. But for today, for the rest of Monday, we just need to be aware. When a planet ingresses a sign, it can often give us a quick dose of what might come in the future as it progresses through that sign. So if you have any planets or angles in the sign of Aquarius, when Saturn ingressed last week and now when Mars ingresses, this is kind of giving you a foretaste of what might show up when these planets conjoin those planets or points that you have in your own chart. All right. But also it's giving a foretaste of what might happen when they make connections to other planets by transit. And what we have building up, which I really want to make you aware of, is Mars in air sign Aquarius is building now into a square aspect, a tense aspect to Aquarius's ruler, Uranus, in the sign of Taurus. Okay, this is very destabilizing energy. Uranus is that kind of radical change maker. It just wants to do things very, very differently. And Taurus is an earth sign. It doesn't really like change. So it's causing a friction as it's trying to bring about change, and Taurus is resisting that change. But we're seeing this already showing up in the form of an increase in veganism, for example. And that's really taken off in the last couple of years since Uranus has been in Taurus, because Taurus rules food and Uranus is this radical change energy, and it's saying, yeah, it's time to change the way we eat. It's time to change our relationship to the planet, to our resources, to food. It's also the emergence of cryptocurrency, with Taurus ruling money and resources. So what we're going to see as the week moves on is this square aspect between Mars and Uranus, building and building and building, like that wave I've talked to you about. Mars essentially kind of is triggering. Mars switches things on, all right? He's like, yep, this is happening now. And he's a very kind of sudden energy. He can be quite activating. He's impulsive. He can be aggressive as well. And certainly when we're looking at a square aspect, it's more likely to bring out the lesser desirable qualities of Mars: impulsiveness, attacking, war, you know, that martial impulse. Anything to do with Mars is martial, okay? So when he's meeting up with Sagittarius, like now, it's giving us the impulse to do something that might take a long time, okay? Saturn is the long term. So perhaps something we've been putting off, certainly around personal Mars responsibility, Saturn. This is saying now's the time, okay, to do that job. And it's not going to be a fun job. And it's not one of those times when we're all like super motivated and enthusiastic to get on with a task that we know we've got to do. It's kind of more like, okay, I can't put this off any longer. I've really just got to get on and do it. So it's kind of initiating that kind of feeling within us. It's the implementation, Mars, of strategy, slow progress, and discipline, Saturn. It's getting started with something, Mars, that you're not really looking forward to, Saturn. Saturn's kind of the fun police. So it's like, okay, it's work. We've got to get started and do some work. It's going to help us anywhere where we need to make a lasting effort. So whatever house Aquarius is occupying in your chart, that's where you can start something now, initiate something that's going to take, you know, 2 to 3 years of solid effort to accomplish. Okay, that's how long Saturn's going to be occupying that space. So this is where Mars is saying, okay, come on, make this happen now. It's also the masculine. Mars relates to man. Okay, we've got Venus for the woman and Mars for the man. And this is masculine alliances, male alliances, men coming together. Saturn kind of bonds things together. Saturn creates commitments, all right? So alliances of men, important alliances of men. And I've seen this, for example, another dip into Bill Gates territory. Bill Gates, for example, coming together with Mark Zuckerberg. I read this week, we're going to join forces in this collaboration to develop a vaccine. So that's kind of another expression of the Mars and Saturn, you know, men coming together kind of essence. So Mars is enthusiasm and let's get something done, and Saturn tempers it just a little bit. It's very similar to Mars in Capricorn, actually. It just kind of tempers it and makes that impulse more long-lasting, more enduring. But of course, we're now in the sign of Aquarius, and this is perhaps lasting efforts towards building the foundations for our future. Saturn is foundations. We're laying the paving slabs for, perhaps with Aquarius, a more technological future, a more, you know, a more science fiction kind of reality for the collective. And we're certainly experiencing that now, fully appreciating how reliant we have become on the internet and resources like that, that's being able to connect us. We might not be able to meet up in person with each other at this time, but we can connect via the internet. We can connect via Zoom and FaceTime and all these wonderful things. We can stay in touch. That's really, really important. And of course, we're seeing some of the, you know, the foundational work being really kind of instigated now with Mars in terms of moving forwards our connectivity in terms of, for example, the mobile networks with the 5G. I actually experienced last night, I witnessed Elon Musk's Starlink project, which is this train of satellites moving over my house. And that was quite, wow, that was really breathtaking type of experience, very Aquarian, very kind of futuristic. Wow, it's very spacey, you know, Aquarius deals with space and astrology and, you know, kind of out there things. And here I am, just as Mars is about to ingress Aquarius, and I'm watching, you know, these machines, essentially Mars rules machines and mechanical objects moving through the sky, you know, as part of building this structure that essentially is going to, his plan is to encircle the entire globe with these satellites to bring internet connectivity to the whole population. So just some thoughts there on the Mars-Saturn. And of course, when Mars is in a challenge aspect to Uranus, then I think that might express itself in ways of vulnerabilities within those structures, within those systems. Certainly Mars and Uranus is a cyber Uranus attack Mars. So we need to just watch for our security online. We need to make sure that, you know, we're not kind of opening ourselves up to being vulnerable to someone else hacking our computer, or how do we communicate with each other if we don't have internet access, for example. These are some of the kind of the things that this might bring up. We might experience financial institutions, for example, with Uranus in Taurus, you know, their systems might be hacked. You know, Mars is a hacking kind of energy. So that's the kind of thing that I wouldn't be surprised if we see that, or some kind of attack on a communication system, mobile networks, that kind of thing. That can happen under this energy. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and also how it might show up personally as well, rather than just in the sort of grand scheme of things. The Mars-Uranus is also radical action. Again, radical being Uranus. I don't do things the norm. I don't conform. All right, it's very rebellious energy. Uranus is very rebellious, and Mars is very much about the individual. So, you know, this energy, we're likely to see, unfortunately, I think, an increase in very impulsive and shocking behavior from individual people. And we've started to see that already with some really disgusting examples of human behavior, with people coughing at the emergency services when they've got coronavirus, or at least suggesting that they have coronavirus. Uranus and Mars bring sudden things, very quick, very shocking, very impulsive. And it's a very accident prone kind of energy. So we're building into that. So just watch out. It's also likely to be an unsettling feeling within us. It's wanting to rebel against a lack of freedom, personal freedom. Mars really needs to be free, and Uranus really wants to be free. So if you're feeling that rising within you, then make sure you've got something to channel that energy into. What gives you a sense of liberty and non-conformity, which is what Uranus likes? How can you create that within the world safely and constructively? How can you channel that energy out of you? Mars loves physical action. It likes you to do some exercise. It likes heat. It wants you to have a sweat. So just pump that energy into doing any kind of physical exercise if you can. Try and get it out of you so that it doesn't build up as we move through the week and then explode into some kind of accident, or just this great amount of frustration at being kind of cooped up, which, you know, it's going to happen at some point. You know, once the novelty wears off and we've all kind of caught up with our spring cleaning, there'll come a point where it's quite frustrating. So this kind of energy, which will peak, I believe, on Tuesday the 7th. So it's going into next week's forecast, but I wanted to bring it to your attention now, just in case you know, for whatever reason, you know, the broadcast doesn't get out to you then, you know, just be aware that that's building. Find a safe way to release any impulsive or rebellious energy in whatever way works for you. So Tuesday, the Mars and Saturn conjunction in Aquarius is exact. And at this point, the moon has finished her journey through Gemini and is now moved into her home sign of Cancer and will conjunct the North Node, therefore opposing the South Node up there in Capricorn. Can put that one there now, actually. Got a bit more room in Capricorn now some of the other planets have moved out. So the nodal axis being these very fated, karmic, destined points, the points that make the eclipses. And so the moon, the waxing moon, will join up with the North Node on Tuesday around 5 p.m. And together they're going to square over to Chiron in Aries. These are cardinal signs, Aries and Capricorn. So it's a more profound feeling. So the feeling moon of abandonment, Chiron. Abandonment and rejection, and generally issues around where you're not as good as you'd like to be, or where you feel you're not as acceptable as other people, where you feel like everyone else is good at this, or everyone else is pretty, or everyone else is, you know, whatever, whatever. This can bring this up, and it can also bring up, obviously, issues of healing, issues of health at this time. So that's quite an important moment, I think, as the moon passes the node and triggers the connection to Chiron. So that on Wednesday, as the moon continues her journey through Cancer, she will then come into the square aspect to the sun in Aries. This is called the first quarter square. It's 7 days after the new moon, and it's called the crisis of manifestation. It's a real test point. It's, you know, we planted these new seeds at the Aries new moon, that very, very powerful new moon that was this whole new beginning as we began a whole new astrological year. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's when the sun moves into Aries, we have the vernal equinox, and the whole new year starts again. So this is an important lunar cycle that we're in, and this is a frustration. This is kind of like a hurdle. We get a hurdle thrown on the track that we're running along at the quarter square, and it's really testing, as it's saying, how much do you really want what it is that you kind of stated you wanted at that Aries new moon? How far are you willing to go? You know, are you really willing to kind of jump over these hurdles and stick with it? So it's a test point, and it can bring with it some frustration. This then means that as the moon finishes up the journey in Cancer, this is moving on now to Thursday, the moon will oppose Pluto and Jupiter towards the end of Capricorn, okay? Reactivating the 22nd degree of Capricorn, where we had the grand conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in January the 12th, just after that eclipse, just after that very first death in China with coronavirus. It will activate that point and then activate the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that I talked about earlier on. So we can see even more highlighting of the kinds of themes that I was talking about with Jupiter and Pluto coming together. So anticipate lots more conspiracy theories. Jupiter is beliefs. Jupiter is personal philosophies and understanding of things, or a need to see something hidden, a need to be able to understand a darker force or something a bit sinister, or in fact an exposing of those hidden gems that get buried deep down in the core. The moon, as she opposes them, shining her light over onto that area and just emphasizing it in the kind of the collective mood. The moon really relates to the collective mood of the people. We also have on Thursday a building trine aspect. Venus is just about finished up her journey through Taurus. I'm sad to say, because I love, love, love Venus in Taurus. It's such beautiful energy. Venus gives us so much pleasure in Taurus, the sign of our senses, the sign of music and food and romance and money and luxuries, you know, touch, beautiful touch, massage, all of these things, delicious smells. Venus really allows us to enjoy those Taurus qualities. Now, she's getting ready to move into Gemini, but what we're finding on Thursday is that Saturn hanging out still at 0 degrees of Aquarius, these guys are now building into a trine aspect to each other. So this is giving some lasting and stabilizing feelings, Venus, okay? Can make us feel a little bit more sure of ourselves, can make us feel a little bit greater sense of reliable relationships, like solid relationships, you know, that kind of vibration. So we've got that building. Saturn is only temporarily in Aquarius. As I mentioned last week, as I talked about social distancing, Aquarius Saturn. Saturn is just essentially doing a recce at the moment. He's moved into Aquarius, but then will retrograde back into Capricorn in the summer, in July. So for the time being, Saturn is only going to go as far as 1 degree of Aquarius, very slow moving. So hanging out at 0 degrees and 1 degrees, then turning retrograde and going back right up to 25 degrees of Capricorn. So I imagine, you know, people are asking me, how long is this going to go on for? I think the bigger picture, the huge picture, is something that I think we're moving into a time of fundamental change that will last for the foreseeable future of our lifetimes. A tiny proportion of it will. The changes that we're seeing happen now will last for a very long time. Saturn and Pluto coming together create those moments. With regards to the more immediate situation, I see the social distancing measures in some form or another taking us right through, perhaps until Saturn moves back into Capricorn and moves out of Aquarius, out of society, out of the tribe and the network. Okay, so around sort of the end of June, potentially. It may not be the full kind of lockdown. Essentially, we're not even really in full lockdown yet. We're still able to go out and exercise, and we're still able to go to the shops and such. So we'll see how that progresses as well. But some measures of, you know, blockage, authority, being sort of held back in terms of how we can move around will be in place, I suspect, until Saturn goes back into Capricorn. In the summertime, and of course we're moving back into eclipse territory then as well. If you haven't, just while I think of it, if you haven't seen, I did a write-up of all of the eclipses of this whole year that was published in AstroCal Diaries for 2020. If you haven't managed to read that, or you didn't manage to get hold of a diary this year, I just kind of published my write-ups on my Facebook page this morning, just to remind us of where we're going. So check in with that if that's of interest to you, because we're, you know, it's really about this moving out of the clash of the old and the new. And again, with Saturn sort of moving out of Capricorn, the old, the traditional, having a look at the future, having a little recce for a few months and going, okay, what are we doing out here in the future? Where are we setting our foundation stones? Where are we paving the way? It's just kind of, you know, sussing things out, strategizing. very strategic is Saturn. And then he'll dive back into Capricorn around the time of the next set of eclipses. So yeah, on Thursday then we have this building connection between the two. So, you know, perhaps structures around our resources, around food systems, around financial systems. This is going to bring some stability to those. Saturn is organization, it's structure, it's reliability. So this could be a time when we see things being a little bit more reliable in terms of, can we get our food delivered? It's very kind of hit and miss at the moment. Can you get what you need when you go to the shop? Can you get a delivery slot if you do your grocery shopping online and you're in isolation? Everything's kind of a bit hit and miss, and I'm hoping that the Saturn-Venus conjunction will help just bring some stability to that situation. And we might also see a little bit of stability, therefore, in the financial markets too. The kind of the flip side to that is complacency. Like the Saturn-Venus thing can make us feel like things are perhaps a little bit more okay than they are. So don't fall into that kind of like, oh yeah, the numbers of cases are going down now, everything's getting back to normal. We can loosen off with how we are applying our rules, Saturn rules. So let's not get too complacent, because a trine aspect is essentially, all it means is there's a very easy flow of energy, and it's very lazy, and we don't have to put any effort in with trines, so it can show up in kind of lazy ways, and complacency is certainly that. So moving then into Friday, which is of course the day of Venus. This is the day that Venus will ingress Gemini. Yay! So anyone with planets or angles in the sign of Gemini, you're going to, in the next few weeks, have the blessings of Venus, the goddess, coming to you at that time. I'm looking forward to this. I have my moon in Gemini, my south node, so I'm looking forward to Venus's influence there. Also, if you have planets and angles in fellow air signs, Libra and Aquarius, then these signs also will pick up on some of the, you know, creating that trine aspect will be able to easily pick up on the Venusian influence. Venus in Gemini likes to be flirtatious. She likes to be very sociable. Okay, so again, this is where I'm going to emphasize not doing the whole complacency thing. The Venus Gemini, she really wants to go out and have fun. She wants variety. Okay, Gemini is all about, it's kind of like the astrological buffet. Gemini likes variety. So it doesn't want to just have the same meal every day. Venus in Gemini does not want to just eat the same food every day, listen to the same music every day. You know, it wants variety and change. So this could be hard to cope with a little bit, essentially, because it's a sociable kind of placement. It wants to get out there and mix with lots of different people and have conversations and all this kind of thing. And that's not going to be quite as easy. So try and channel that into different ways that you can use words. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and so therefore it's all about words. So with Venus there, writing love letters, starting to prepare for the Venus retrograde. Venus will go retrograde I think she enters shadow on the 9th of April. So it's not too far away. So this would be a great time to just learn a little bit. You know, Gemini loves to learn new skills. So you can learn with Venus, you could learn a new instrument, you could learn to cook something new, you could learn a new beauty technique, you could learn a new craft, or just something creative. You could put pen to paper and write a love letter. You know, they're kind of, they don't happen anymore. And I think that's a real sad loss in this digital age, that no one kind of expresses their love, Venus, in the written form anymore. And certainly Venus in Gemini is the love of words. There's lots of I can't think of any that spring to mind right now, but I think Shakespeare actually had Venus in Gemini. It's this love of words and a beauty with words. So this can be a time perhaps to learn singing or improve singing techniques, for example. That's putting words into a beautiful kind of expression. Also music and all of these kinds of things. So try and channel that inability to go out and be social and what have you into something else. As always I say, you know, use the energy so it doesn't use you. If we kind of don't channel the energy in desirable ways, then it can show up in energy in ways that aren't too desirable. So Friday, Venus moves into Gemini and will also be trining Mars as well as Saturn, because they're really, really tight together. So this can bring harmony between the sexes, Venus and Mars, okay? Harmony between the feminine and masculine principles, okay? So this is a very fertile and creative time. We all have Mars, we all have Venus, irrespective of what our assigned gender is. We all have these principles within us, and all aspects of life do as well. So there's a harmonizing of the female and the masculine energies. Now at the same time, Venus at this point will be in fire sign Leo. Again, Leo likes to play, Leo likes to have fun, so the collective mood might be a bit more light-hearted with Leo. But again, we really need to not get complacent here. So again, the moon is yin, it's receptive feminine energy, and it's going to be trining the masculine solar energy over there in Aries. So there's a kind of a repetition of this theme of the female and the male being in harmonious connection to each other. So see in what ways you can channel that. Leo, you know, Leo loves to play, Leo loves to dress up, Leo loves to be theatrical, put on a performance. So see in what ways you can, it's very playful, it's very fun orientated, it's very childlike. So I can imagine us seeing some funny things, actually. Some funny memes will come out at this time, I suspect. Funny YouTube videos, things that really just give us a laugh. And if you're feeling all cooped up and you just want to do something, then channel it into that. Make a daft video and put it out there, you know, give us all a laugh. I think that's the best way that we can work with that. Or turn it inwards, you know, turn the energy inwards and see if you can assimilate the feminine and masculine aspects of yourself. If you've been doing any work on yourself, you might be aware of where there is a kind of a discrepancy between the two. Perhaps now would be a good time to just kind of align them within as we experience the energy without. So, the lack of clarity. Saturday, Saturn's day. Saturday, what we have is what's been building all week, and this is what I was saying earlier about there not being clarity of information. There's an expression around gullibility. When we swallow something, hook, line, and sinker. And it's a fishing term, I believe. Never been fishing. So fishes is Pisces, all right? And Pisces and Neptune energy can be naive, all right? They can be very unboundaried. And Neptune energy is deceptive, not always intentionally, but Neptune changes our perspective of things. It makes things difficult to see as they really are. So for example, Neptune rules photography and film. Now, films aren't really exactly as real life is, right? It's a way of using the lens, which is a Neptune expression, using that lens just to alter reality, to romanticize it, to make it more creative and imaginative. All of these energies are Neptune Pisces energies, the imaginational realm. So we need to consider then that when Mercury is, is the messenger, Mercury's job is to move information from one place to another, whether that be from the page to our brain when we read something, or from our brain to our mouth when we speak something, and into someone else's brain when they hear it. Essentially, Mercury, Hermes, he was the only god that was allowed to travel both into the heavens and into the underworld so that he could move information from these places. He's also called, of course, the trickster, which is where we get some of the issues around Mercury retrogrades from. He's this youthful Gemini, playful energy. He likes to kind of get up to a bit of mischief and switch things around. He'll like, moves very fast, does Mercury. So we've got a bit of a trickster energy. Mercury is information and understanding and thinking and communication in a sign that it doesn't like being in because it lacks clarity. This is Pisces. Conjunct Neptune exactly on Saturday. Again, massive lack of clarity, changing our perception of things, altering how things appear, and getting us perhaps to swallow something, hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, the fishes. So let's just be really extra discerning. I don't care what information it is. This applies to all information, whether it's from trusted sources or untrusted, wherever. Just take everything with a massive pinch of salt. We've got a ton of conspiracy theories going on out there right now. And lots of who are very confident in their beliefs. Jupiter, remember, gets full of himself. Very comfortable. They know the truth. I know the truth. Only I know the truth. You know, give that a really wide berth. If someone can't check themselves, question themselves, apply some critical thinking, avoid it like the plague. I would never ask you, I would never stand before you and say, I speak the truth. Only I know the truth. I give you my personal interpretation of what the planets are influencing us, the way they are influencing us. But there's a whole range of potentialities. As an astrologer, yes, I'm trained and my job is to kind of look at prior cycles and work with people's charts and distill through my experience and my understanding what's more likely to show up and what isn't. But I would never stand before you and say, this is the gospel. This is the 100% truth. Then we're getting into the territory of our Jim Jones type characters who are, you know, I'm God. Like, you know, you must do as I say. So there's a ton of that energy around at the same time as we've got this very murky, very kind of, you will be taken advantage of if your boundaries are too open, right? Neptune, Pisces is water. It's unbounded, it's egoless. And it kind of, it's easy to deceive. Yeah, imagine that hook, line, and sinker looks like a fly to that little fish. He's got, oh, there's a fly. You know, I'm gonna go and get that, and it's not a fly, and he comes a copper. I can't really trust what we see right now. So bear that in mind. Poisoning is a Pisces Neptune type of situation for similar reasons. It's a disguise. Yeah, someone hands you, you know, I think of that episode of the Game of Thrones where just literally like a whole room of people are given this beer. And yeah, oh, great beer, it looks lovely, especially to a Pisces, especially to Neptune. You know, Neptune loves a drink. But it's not, it's got poison in it, you know. So yeah, just really be careful, really be discerning, question everything, question yourself, and don't align yourself with anything that appears to be, you know, the gospel truth in anything. Keep yourself safe is the key thing. I also wanted to mention a bit more about Mercury at this point. So we started, as I mentioned earlier, we started the year on the 10th of January with an eclipse in Capricorn. And Mercury was actually exactly conjunct that eclipse. That eclipse was at 19 degrees of Capricorn, okay? Just 3 degrees away from the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. This conjunction of Mercury and Neptune, where Mercury has now progressed to from that eclipse point, is also 19 degrees. So this creates what astrologers call a sextile aspect. So that's half of a trine, essentially, in terms of mathematics and geometry. A sextile is half of a trine, so it similarly has half of the effect of a trine. So it's saying these points in the sky can reach each other reasonably easily, not quite as easily as with a trine, if we just put a little bit, if we just give it a nudge in the right direction, okay? So Mercury at that point, making an exact to the degree connection to the eclipse that we had that kind of started this whole thing off, or certainly was the trigger for it. That interested me, that caught my attention. So I was looking ahead to the eclipse that will end the year. So we had the eclipse there that started the year, that was exactly conjunct Mercury. We're going to end this year with an eclipse on December the 14th. And actually, that's also going to be conjunct Mercury again. So it's all this information. And interestingly, that's going to take place over in Sagittarius. Jupiter ruled Sagittarius. And that's going to be, again, 19 degrees. And that's going to be, therefore, an exact square aspect to where we are now. So this is just some really interesting patterns that I've experienced. And there's an asteroid called Pallas Athena. She's very prominent. I don't incorporate the asteroids into this chart because it just goes a little bit too far for most people to be able to kind of understand. But everything that's happening up there in Capricorn right now has a ton of Pallas Athena energy. If you're familiar with her, she's a goddess asteroid. I have a conjunct my sun, and it's said to be the astrologer's asteroid. Shows up very prominently in many astrologers' charts. And because one of the skills of Pallas is actually pattern finding, okay? And that's really, really important in astrology, as I think I've just demonstrated, you know, looking at where's Mercury, well, where's the connection to that eclipse? And then there's the connection to this eclipse, and okay, we're seeing a theme coming up. So just identifying patterns, and there's a lot of Pallas Athena type energy involved in the situation. I know some of my regular clients do work with the goddess asteroid, so I just thought I'd mention that there. Neptune will be retrograding that 19-degree point as well. So Neptune, a very slow moving planet, just going to move on to that point, move back, move forward. So the whole year, Neptune is going to be keeping that 19th degree of Pisces very much activated, which is very interesting to me. I also think Saturday night and Sunday night with Mercury-Neptune conjunction, watch out for your dreams, particularly if you have planets and points in Pisces. This is the kind of energy that can give us some quite lucid dreams, okay? Overnight then and into Sunday, the exact conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto happens. So the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction and the Mercury-Neptune conjunction happening almost simultaneously. And that's why I just really feel it needs a little bit more of our attention. The moon then on Sunday moves into Mercury's own sign of Virgo and will oppose these two, shining her light on them, activating them. So again, very lucid dreams, information that might come through to you in meditation. in spiritual connection. You know, Mercury, Neptune is essentially the prayer. Mercury being words and Neptune being our connection to source. So there's themes around meditation, connection to source, communicating with source, and saying, you know, whatever you feel is God or creator energy, however that is for you personally, just saying, you know, I know these are very, very confusing times. I'm confused by all of the different influences and information and very powerful messages of, quote, truth that are out there at the moment. Just connect to source, and that's going to help you to steady your own course. You know, Pisces and Neptune are all about meaning. When we have Neptune transits, they tend to provoke us into asking the bigger questions. What's it all about? Is the ultimate Neptune question. Did I just come here to eat, sleep, work? Or is there something more? There has to be something more. Neptune knows there's something more. Neptune is the connection to source. All right. So use that if you can to do some spiritual work in whatever way that works for you. So yeah, that will be activated by a Mercury ruled moon. Being Mercury ruled kind of makes the moon a little bit more receptive to that energy, essentially. So that's the week. There's so much going on, and I know that's a lot of information to take in. And thanks for bearing with me if you've managed to get all the way through to the end. I really, really do appreciate you watching this. I want this to be a force for good. I want astrology to be given back to people. I feel like it's an ancient wisdom that has been taken from people, and it's really important to me that I can give people the opportunity to relearn this skill, even if it's just as simple as understanding the moon cycle. Just that, you know, that's the most common reading that I do, is the monthly Moondala reading, understanding how the moon cycle is affecting you. And it's really important to me to get these videos out there. So if you can support that work, I would really love it if you can give me a like, a love, a share. The algorithms behind the scenes, you know, this is very Aquarian. That's what they kind of work on. They will increase the exposure. It depends on how much activity, digital activity is taking place. Mars in Aquarius, digital activity. So help me create something that lasts, Saturn, out there in the digital world, and give me some support, another Saturn thing. Remember, as we move into next week, that the thing I've really got my eye on is the Mars-Uranus square. Cyber attacks, sudden accidents can happen at that time. There can also be real genius breakthroughs as well at this time. It's a very provocative energy, and it can just force some real inventiveness. But I just want to give you a slight heads up about that, you know, that kind of sudden and shocking and accident prone energy. And particularly in connection with computers and communications and resources and things of the kind of the Taurus and Aquarius nature. So watch out for that. It's going to be activated by a full moon that we have next week as well. So again, lots going on next week, and I will be here, of course, to tell you all about it and to guide you through it. Have a calmer week as you can. Find ways to channel the energy that work for you, and stay safe, stay well. Lots of love. Thanks for watching. Bye.